Thank you for joining us. As you may have already experienced, all attendees are currently on mute so that we don't have a lot of background noise. But we do ask that you use the Q&A window to ask questions as we go along. And as they come to you, we will answer some of them via chat, and the ones that I think would make a great discussion, we will answer at the end of the presentation as well. And do let us know in the chat window if you have any sort of audio-visual issues. And just as a final note, the session is being recorded, and we will be sending you the recording afterward. So we have two presenters here today. We have Chris Groot, who is a vice president here at SolarWinds, and he's been working with SolarWinds Backup since its launch into the North American market in 2010. And he has about 16 years of experience with software as a service businesses and is very much focused on bringing innovative products to market and working with managed service providers throughout the world. Our other presenter is actually an MSP who is a SolarWinds customer, a gentleman named Ken Briscoe. He's the founder and CEO of Comms IT, which he founded more than a decade ago to serve the Australian market. Previous to that, he filled IT roles with organizations including JP Morgan, Sumitomo Bank, Nomura Bank, and several others. So Ken, would you mind telling us just a little bit about your company and how you do business so that the audience can understand your perspective a little better?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. Yeah, okay. So Comms IT, it's been around for, well, longer than I can imagine. Really now, it's I came back to Australia in about 2002 after lots of stints with banks in the UK. Predominantly a programmer at that time. And since being back in Australia, I've been running more like an MSP sort of model, you know, support and that sort of thing for customers. Our thing really is as much automation as possible that we can sort of deliver to our customers. And the reason for that is that, you know, the less labour that you have to do, the more profitable your business can be. So so we've invested quite heavily in SolarWinds tool sets, and I think pretty much just about everything that they sell we have in our toolbox. So so I guess, you know, I can't speak enough about how good the tool set is and how it's helped our business to sort of get to where we want it to be, which was more of an automated business, really. So
Awesome.
yeah.
That's wonderful. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And with that, I think I will turn it over to Chris Groot and the team to get going, and I will mute. If you have any questions, again, just type them into the chat window.
Awesome. Thanks, Carrie. And certainly, if there are more interesting audio-visual things, please just jump in and let me know as soon as possible so I don't carry on too long. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And thanks, Ken, for joining us, of course, as well. Let's jump right in. But I guess one thing I'll mention before I do that is that, oh, I've got a little dinger here I'm going to get rid of. Pardon me for a sec here. One thing I wanted to mention was at the end of the show here, we will just take a couple minutes to run through a demo as well. So certainly no obligation to stay. That's not the purpose of this, but a lot of times people just sort of have curiosity about the actual product at the after learning a bit about the opportunity. And so we'll stick around. For those who want to stick around, we can do that after the Q&A. All right, so reliance on Microsoft 365, or as you might still be calling it, Office 365, but now changed to Microsoft 365, has grown. So it's grown by company adoption. So more and more companies obviously are using that, and we see that. Actually, Ken, maybe you jump in. What do you see happening with respect to the adoption of Microsoft 365?
In my experience, lots of companies are picking it up now. It's changed the landscape, especially I reckon the last 2 or 3 years. And even more recently, in my experience, it's very prevalent out there now. So I think for me, and this is the interesting thing about the MSP space and Microsoft 365. I think to add value to your customers, for me at least, I really believe that it's about understanding the suite and how that can help your customers. And So been an investment here to understand it and really try to then consult to business owners about its potential.
And how many, like, I mean, what percentage of your customers would you estimate are using it today?
Oh, that 75%. It's quite a lot.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, it's you know, in terms of what, I mean, it's not a, you know, my customer base probably isn't indicative. It's not hundreds and hundreds of customers, but in my sphere, it's quite a lot of them, and I do push it as well. So I do try and encourage them to have it.
Great. Well, yeah, we've certainly seen that from our perspective as well. And it's not just the company adoption; it's also at the user level. They're using more and more features of it. We've certainly seen this with as people are moving, working remotely now, outside of the office. The adoption of SharePoint, OneDrive is sort of starting to, we're seeing the end of the file server as a critical piece of the infrastructure with Office 365 being adopted. So, and as that transition happens, and as we see like the increasing threat landscape with respect to phishing and malware attacks, actually I read a stat the other day that over 18% of the emails and so on that are out there are related now to COVID-19 related scams. So that's pretty amazing because we're talking like hundreds of millions per day. And the bad guys have definitely not paused for the COVID situation. So, with respect to that, and with the threat landscape changing with people working from home as well, where they're just naturally in a less secure position, certainly the role of the MSP in protecting customer data is critical. So with customers, a lot of the times the challenge is actually educating them on what exactly security means. And so how do you educate them with respect to making the appropriate investment in security? I'll lay out this format, and then Ken, I'll go to you. Basically, this is one of the ways that we suggest that is a way to educate customers who may not really understand what it is that you're providing for them. So putting data at the center of things, there's basically a bunch of layers that you can put in place to prevent or to detect if the data is at threat. So first of all, at the internet level, of course, is mail protection and domain filtering. The network level, when that's available, not as available in the work from home scenario, is the firewall. With respect to people, looking at user training, proper password management, certainly at this point using 2FA on everything should be a requirement. From an app perspective, being very disciplined with your patch management. And then wrapping around the data, there's antivirus, and certainly more and more now we see the adoption of EDR, both to prevent attacks, but you can see wrapping around the backside from a recoverability perspective, the ability to have rollback available. And then behind that is basically where backup comes in. So the simple statement that I once heard that I thought was great was, you can build a 10-foot wall in front of your data, but regardless of when you do that, the bad guys will then come with a 12-foot ladder and figure out a way through. So backup is absolutely part of the equation, and Microsoft backup of Microsoft for Office 365 is definitely absolutely part of that. And then digging deeper into having more availability with respect to standby systems and testing and so on. Ken, from your perspective, is this seem like a model that would make sense to your customers?
Yes, yeah. Look, a lot of the things you have there, I use through SolarWinds. So the EDR thing, the patch management through N-Central, the people through Passportal. Okay, so here's what's changed for us, and it's an interesting dilemma, because what's happened is people have all gone home. It's all been in a rush, and there's two things that have happened. One is they've got their home internet router and they've got their home computer, and they're trying to get onto whatever resources that they need for their business, right? So there's the challenge in that all of a sudden your labour time goes up and everything goes up. So really our conversation with our customers is around that entire suite, and to say to our customers that backup is now even more important because there's a couple of parts of the equation there that are now not totally under control.
Right.
So that's literally the firewall part, really.
Yeah.
So they all invest in really good routers at the office, but then they don't do that at home. So that's the challenge, really.
Yeah, you're touching on exactly where I was headed, actually, in terms of the approach, because in that scenario where the firewall's out of the equation, just being able to present like what's the right mixture and level of protection for the work from home scenario, and certainly we see with mail filtering, that's super important. Moving around sort of the horn here, having password management, EDR you touched on, web protection, which is filtering out dangerous web content, being able to protect the home user, the work from home user, with a backup perspective with what they store on their actual device, especially that work related portion, and then finally what we're touching on today is where Microsoft 365 really fits in that mix. So what you're saying, Ken, if I understood you correctly, that sort of fits with your approach to security today?
Yes. Look, in fact, in response to all of this, I'm actually looking at a new bundled product, which is specifically around this suite. So basically, like all of us MSPs out there, we like to bundle, and we have this full approach where we try to automate stuff and sort of be proactive around the home user. I just see this as a bit of an opportunity to just bundle as many of these together into one suite of things that I will offer to my customers. So yeah, I think it's really important to get this right. And the other thing I would say is when you talk to small business owners, there's not many of them that really, they're not educated to get it, and that's our job, to educate them and to make it as simple as possible to sell is really my goal. So not go there with a menu of options, maybe take one or two of these, but to actually do it properly and take them all. So that's really the approach that we'll take going to market with it.
Oh, interesting. So that's like presenting one solution, but behind that is multiple sort of angles to the equation.
Yes, that's right.
All right. Well, certainly, so we've already established that Microsoft 365 is pervasive, but when we talk specifically about it, and the work from home scenario, I guess the question I have is, do you see this ending as people are now starting to head back to the office, or that the sort of the phases of reintegrating? Do you think this is like a temporary thing that's gonna go away, Ken, or what's your view
No,
on?
I don't. Well, I'll answer that with a story. So I was talking to one of my customers the other day. They're a 25-seat organisation, and so they did the obvious thing. Everybody went home, and it was actually, funnily enough, we use SolarWinds Take Control to get them home just in that emergency, because nobody had enough time to do it, so we had to do it quick. Anyway, so I was talking to him yesterday, in fact, and like everyone's wondering when we're going to open. I said, "What are your plans?" And he said, "They're staying there." That's basically his words. They are staying home. I'm going to go to hot desking, and they are staying at home. So I think, I haven't got a crystal ball, but I think a number of customers have tasted it, and they will like it because they will save costs.
Right.
A lot of costs that they will save. In fact, this customer told me that they were saving a lot of money by having staff at home. So yeah, I think it's going to be prevalent.
Well, Really interesting. I actually just saw, I think Twitter announced yesterday or the day before a similar thing that they were going to offer that employees could, or most employees could permanently work from home.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that's popping up more often, that certainly makes this not a temporary thing, but a new reality.
Mm.
So moving through the education and getting, so we sort of talked about the big picture of security, where Microsoft 365 fits in this. So we came up with some typical objections that people see. So people saying, well, my data's in the cloud, so doesn't that mean it's already backed up? And the fact is that 1/3 of SaaS users have actually lost data from a cloud application. And the secondary question is like, well, how then could I lose data? And so there are a number of ways that we see it in terms of an employee leaves a company and their account gets deleted, but then thereafter you need to go back into that data or that inbox to find some information. Or a file is accidentally deleted, it's not discovered immediately. It goes through the deletion time frame with Office 360 or Microsoft 365. The other scenario is that people are actually hiding their tracks, so they're deleting things so that it's not found. And then lastly is the threat from just a virus or a hacker getting into your instance and actually deleting data. So Ken, I'm just curious, with your experience, have you ever seen anything like this bumping up in any of your customers?
Yeah, look, it's you know, like in the traditional environment where you have file shares, somebody is going to delete a file or a folder, or sometimes even the entire stack of files, you know. So in the traditional environment, you know, you've got your backups and you restore. There's no difference here, and I've seen it. And basically, Microsoft 365 now, they will, if you have a ransomware attack, say, they will roll it back for you. But it's the things you say here. It's when people accidentally do things or a hacker does it. So once that happens, they're gone, unless you've got you know, multiple backup points.
Yeah, and do you have any sense of what that, like on the ransomware side of things, and you're dealing with Microsoft, how responsive they are? Did you, like, have you
Actually, I've
bumped
got
into that at all?
experience. Maybe I shouldn't say it here. It happened to me. So a couple of years ago now, I got a ransomware attack from a poison page. It travelled from my local machine all the way up into my OneDrive and SharePoint, and blew everything away. So it all got blown away. In those days, there weren't really simple solutions available. That's my defence anyway. So I wasn't backed up. And so I contacted Microsoft. They got me back within about 3 or 4 days. They rolled it back to that point before ransomware. They didn't roll it back completely properly, and some of my SharePoint stuff was sort of screwy after that. But
Right.
but they do offer that. Oh, they did then. They did offer that service, but it wasn't ideal. 4 days offline, and it didn't come back exactly the way it should have.
Yeah. Well, that certainly
So
hides the risk, and I'm surprised to hear that. Like there's um that it actually happened to you. That's really
yeah,
hit close to home, doesn't it?
I shouldn't admit it, being an MSP myself.
Well, I mean, that just goes to show it can happen to anyone. But yeah, in terms of, I mean, we know the risks. It's really the same story as your file server or any other scenario where um, you lose data. Obviously, there's the risk of it being valuable and it basically being in an extinction event or significantly hurting your business when you lose that data. But there's also regulatory and legal reasons why you want to have that available. So in hearing these objections, really from our view, what we preach in terms of how to educate customers with Microsoft 365 specifically is that it really is a shared responsibility. So Microsoft focuses on availability, and they cover off the infrastructure, the replication, the recycle bin. as well as some of the things at the security and the regulatory level. But in terms of you as the MSP and the actual end company themselves, they are responsible for the data. So the data, the files that are created, the retention that goes beyond the recycle bin, and as well as the internal controls that go along and who has access to the data. So, and ultimately, even though it really is the end customer's responsibility, you as the MSP will get the call when something goes wrong. So this really is ensuring that you've got your bases covered. So we touched on this already, actually, but best ways to package it, well, making it part of a security bundle. So making it as an expanded service on top of your monitoring or your existing sort of MSP business, educating customers on what new levels of security you're bringing in light of the changing landscape, and that it's an area that they need to be investing in. So making it part of every new contract is certainly a great idea, a great way to package it. And then secondly, as customers come up for renewal, same thing applies here. So having the opportunity to educate them ahead of time, get them in a position so that you're setting expectations and knowing where they know where you're leading them with respect to security. And in terms of the overall, just simple ideas in terms of what this looks like, roughly coming in at the $20 or $25 per user level with a layered approach that fits into that model that addresses all the significant risks along the path is really what that picture looks like. So this just gives you an idea of what it could cost and what the margin looks like, and where you can price it. Ken, you touched on earlier that you were thinking about this, and I know for everyone it varies based on what you're already doing and where you're at in terms of bringing your customer along. But what are your thoughts when you see this way of modeling it?
Okay, so I'm working through this with you guys as we speak. Like some of your support staff as well.
Okay.
So my thoughts on this. So my thoughts so far is the way look, when you look at how you price any MSP service, it's about how much labour and then licensing costs, right? So there's a million different ways that you could price your product. But the way that I sort of look at this is the way I would do this, is I would take that $9.80 and then I would try, and this is the bit I'm working through with your guys at the moment, is I need to try and average out how much labour is going to be involved in administering a customer for these things, and
right.
And then adding an average on top of as labour, and then adding a margin on top of that. So in other words, not for me to not go in as an a la carte type approach where I'm saying to customers, this is cost $4, that costs $4, this is $2.50, because inevitably what you get then is, but I've already got mail assurance, or I've already got a password manager, and then it becomes really hard to sell as a bundle or as a service.
Yeah.
So I tend to go, what my plan is to do it the same way I do any MSP product, and that is, it doesn't matter what you got out there. This is a service. This is how we do it. If there's AV out there, we just take it out and we put this one in. So that's my thought about it at this stage. I'm looking at a bundle that includes some labour, because at the end of the day, you have to think about how much labour you need to add to this to, let's say something comes in like a virus. They can't take it out. You have to, because that's the way this product works. So there is labour involved too. So yeah. MSPs need to address that thing.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying, because underpricing that is underpricing your labor is never a happy ending.
No, well, that's right. It's a recipe to going broke.
Absolutely. Well, and then specific to the product themselves, so when looking at the landscape, SolarWinds isn't the only group that has backup for Office 365. So what are the strengths with respect to that we bring? And it really touches on that labor side of things. So the efficiency and the ease of use of having it in a consolidated dashboard where you can actually see all your server and workstation backup as well, including the storage, making a turnkey solution where, in your case, the data would stay always in Australia, that it's encrypted all the time, and then it just comes at a single low per user price for the full suite of services. So that's really our approach to making that that equation work and make it really simple. Because ultimately, you got to be ready to respond. You got to set yourself up for success in that scenario and provide increasingly better service levels to weather the storm. So with that, I think we're ready for a little Q&A. Carrie, is there anything else before we go to questions that we should cover off?
Yeah, the main questions I've seen have been having to do with, people wanting some more information about specifically what SolarWinds does and how our product works. So, maybe rolling into a little demo would make sense, and then we can continue to take questions in chat as that's happening.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So I guess just reinforce that if you do have a question along the lines here, just pop it into the question panel there. So just popping over to what the actual product looks like in case you haven't seen it. So SolarWinds Backup, it'll cover off your workstations, your servers, but also Office 365. So this is, a sample of it, kind of what I'll air quote as a typical MSP. But what's great in here is you can get an overview of everything in a single glance, as well as what's been successful and completed, what's currently in process. So clicking into the Office 365 side of things, you can drill down, you can see just the 6 domains that you're protecting, or tenants that you're protecting. And then from there, you can drill down into any one of those from any of your customers and see the specifics of them. So you can see for the number of protected users for Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint. You can see a history of all the backups that have been happening. So those happen frequently throughout the day. You can get a view to the number of protected users, and then all the details around the specifics to your Exchange, OneDrive, and SharePoint. So being able to filter that out and actually add in, if you want, automatically add in new accounts as they get added to the domain is also a nice little feature in there. So with respect to that, setting it up is super simple. You're just clicking on add, and the first choice is between servers and workstations or Office 365. And then from there, you're just bringing in the domain name, providing your credentials, and connecting. And then once that's connected, it's all pre-configured for you, and then you can just watch the backups run. And then finally, when it does come time for restore, of course, right here, you can just go back to the specific domain that you want to restore from. And so you can see that you can force a backup at any time, but also just run a restore right here from the same console. Ken, I can't remember, what's your experience? Have you gone through this process with Microsoft?
Yeah, look, the thing I really like about this, it's so simple. As techs, we're used to having all these different steps and, getting into all these low-level things. We don't have to worry with this. It's very, very simple. And, like as an MSP, it's all about the less labor, the better. So that makes this a really attractive proposition for me because it is so simple.
Yeah, and that's where the effort certainly has been placed. We weren't the first to market with this, but we really wanted it to be that kind of experience. So I appreciate that feedback. Okay, Carrie, have we gotten any more? That's it for the demo. I just wanted to be real quick there, just to sort of give people a picture of things. But certainly, I'll just say if this is intriguing, there are people in Sydney that will certainly help you out and give you more information.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a couple of questions. One of them about what types of data are protected, and I answered that in chat, just basically saying that it's currently Exchange, OneDrive, and SharePoint. And they did ask about Teams. That's on our roadmap, but not available just yet. We have another question about, is this available for NFR or demo so that they can test and show clients?
It is possible in the console here that you can set up a new customer in a trial format. So when you do create a new customer, it will give you the option to create them in trial. So as long as you check that box, you're going to get 30 free days with a new client.
Excellent. That's nice to see how it's done. This is a really relevant local question. Someone is saying, with so many Australian customers who still have very slow internet connections, how efficient is this service for backing up servers, which is something that we also do? And they're asking about the minimum bandwidth that we recommend for our product to work effectively.
I can say that's been a common sort of question that we've gotten over the years from Australia. In terms of the amount of data we move, it really is never a constraint. We have customers that are in, like, well, I guess spread out all over Australia in terms of some of our, I'm thinking of a large customer who deals with retail customers that are spread out in every town, and they're able to run hourly backups across their server fleet. So typically we're moving just megs of data between backup windows. Yeah, just to sort of, if I take, well, let's see if I can find a bigger example in this little mix here. I'll just sort by size. Yeah, so this one is at like a 2.3 terabyte server. And what we can see in the backup, so if I look at the files and folders, where the vast majority of this, we can see it's got about 2.3 million files. There was 1.5 gigs of changes since the last backup session happened, which represented 7,294 files that changed. But this software moves 159 megs of data. So virtually anyone in the even with the poorest connectivity can handle that type of that amount of data being moved. So of course, on your initial backup, that's, we do need to move usually about 60% of the original source size after dedupe. But once that's complete, it is just very, very small amounts of data and happens in very, very small amounts of time.
Excellent. Yeah, that efficiency is really a good benefit. And, as the questions are indicating and people are seeing, one of the other nice things about this product is that you are able to manage your backups for both virtual and physical servers, for workstations, and for Microsoft 365, all from this one dashboard. And, the way that Chris showed, you can drill down on any one of them at any time, and it just saves you a lot of time and energy. So we have a couple of other questions. One has to do with the amount of storage that's included. They're saying, is it unlimited storage for Office 365 backups? And how long is a user's account backup kept if their user account is deleted? So kind of two questions in one there.
Yeah, so the first question, in terms of the amount of data, we use the word unlimited with Office 365. In the fine print, though, to be super clear, you get 1 terabyte per user, and that is pooled at the domain level. So that is as close to unlimited as we could kind of make it out of the box. And we haven't had anyone come close to that. The second question was the amount of retention.
Mm-hmm.
So for OneDrive and SharePoint, it's 1 year. And for Exchange, it's 7 years.
Great, and that's the case even if the user account is deleted, but there are backups, they're still retained for that amount of time, right?
That's correct.
Great. And related to that, I've got another question that says, if a customer deleted a folder within their emails, for example, a week earlier and didn't notice, is it possible to restore just that individual folder, or do you have to restore the entire mailbox?
You can be selective in exactly what you want to restore. So whether it's the individual email or a folder, you can go back to that point in time and restore just that specific amount. The other nice part is in terms of connectivity, we kind of touched on servers, which typically are or often at the customer site. But this is actually like when you're running your restores with Office 365, it's actually going directly from our data center to Microsoft. So there's there's a lot less limitation, let's say, in terms of bandwidth that are happening between those two locations.
Great. Okay, I am not seeing any other questions right off the bat. One other thing I would mention is if you've liked what you've seen and you're interested in talking with one of our local backup experts right there in the Australia region, please type the word contact into the chat window and we will have someone follow up with you to discuss, more details about pricing and any additional more detailed questions that you may have. We can set you up with a trial account or a one-on-one demo. So again, just type the word contact into chat if you would like us to follow up with you. And I'm just looking to see if we have any new questions. Here's a good one, and I'm not sure I understand fully what they mean, but the question is, does the granularity of backups increase over time? Not quite sure what they mean by that.
So we're running backups several times per day, and each of those points are kept for the full retention of like of the mailbox or of the OneDrive or SharePoint. So in the case of if we're running backups every 4 days, or sorry, every 4 hours on Exchange as an example, that means that you've got 6 restore points per day, and those 6 restore points will be available for 7 years. So it doesn't require, or the technique that we use doesn't require that we actually consolidate them into dailies and weeklies that you might be thinking of from other backup solutions that are more limited in terms of the way that the techniques that they use. So each of those restore points from every backup job will be available.
Great. We've got someone who I think joined a little bit late and they missed the slide where we talked about the costs and the price of this product. And they're also wondering if this software is brandable with the MSP's own name, logo, and so on.
Yeah, so with the servers and workstations, it is fully brandable. So this console that you see here would be, it's not really branded, but your customers would never see it. But the agent that exists from a server and workstation perspective is brandable, so you can come under any of your customers, or you can brand at the top level, like at the MSP level. And so if you click on that, you can go to custom branding, and from there you can actually specify the for any reports that come out of the system. You can, and if they were to be customer facing, you can define which email address they're going to come from. And then you can also update the header and all the colors and basically make the actual agent look just like your website. So that's a really nice, easy to use feature, and just highlighting where your customers would see that then. So on their local machine, I can just launch the backup client here remotely. They'll actually see those all your logos show up on their own devices. For Office 365 specifically though, they'll never really see a client or anything. It'll just be managed by you, and you can provide reports to them, but it won't be something that they're actually engaged with.
Great, that makes sense. Okay, and while that's loading, we have another question about in a disaster recovery situation, such as a natural disaster, a fire, how does bare metal restore work? How is that handled by the product?
Okay, yeah, so we're going just beyond Office 365 here. But,
yes, we are.
Yeah, there's a couple of details that matter. So in terms of if it's a physical server or a virtual server, either way, you have the choice of recovering. If it's physical, you can go back to bare metal. Our bare metal, well, let me just shorten up here. Under downloads, there's 2 options. One is bare metal recovery, so that's going to create a bootable USB or an ISO that you can run, and that's best if you are actually going back to bare metal. If you're going to recover a physical machine or a virtual machine that you're backing up into another hypervisor, like Hyper-V, VMware, then the right tool for the job is what's called the recovery console. So basically, in a single pass, you can have that VM registered inside your hypervisor, ready to go. And in fact, you can have it configured so that you're doing that ahead of time and always having it on standby. So yeah, both work really well depending on this, the type of problem you're trying to solve. And I might as well touch on the fact that just in beta right now and coming out in like being generally available in July is our recovery testing. So you can actually take any physical or virtual server that you're backing up, and you can actually run a test of recovering it as a virtual server. So we call that VDR. And you can actually just configure that in just a couple of clicks with a particular device. And in our environment, then it'll actually spin up that VM, take a screenshot of it running, let you know exactly how long it took to recover that. And that way you have some good level of assurance that without running a timely test on your side, you can, in just a couple of clicks, get a lot of information with respect to your readiness for a disaster.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was just going to suggest that. And since this is currently in beta, at the moment, there is no charge for this. So if you're in here testing and you want to give that a try, if you're a brand new customer that hasn't used this product before, you do get a 30-day free trial of everything. But if you're a current customer and you just have not used the recovery testing yet, you still have a little bit of time in the beta where you could try it for free if you'd like. Here's another question asking if VDR is an add-on. I'm assuming they're asking if it's an additional cost for that.
Yeah, no additional cost. That's just part of the program.
Right. Now, the automated recovery testing, once it comes out of beta and is generally available, there is a cost for that. But the VDR that Chris showed you originally is no charge. Okay. Well, unless there's other questions, I see some positive responses to that news that people look happy about that. So again, like I say, if you're interested in a follow-up, just type contact into the window. And if there's any other questions, please let us know. And otherwise, I think we're about to the point where we're ready to wrap it up. I didn't know, Ken, do you have any final comments to add?
Not really. I'm just looking at the product as I see it myself, and I guess I'd just say one thing, that everything you've said I concur with, really. It's a really easy product to use.
Awesome. Well, that's the best kind of feedback we can get, Ken. So yeah, no, really appreciate it. And certainly to everyone out there, wish you all the best. Hope you're staying safe during this somewhat tricky time. We're fortunate, I think, being in an industry that's really in demand as we move through, but certainly there is still lots of stress out there for people. So we wish you all the best, and really thank you for taking the time to attend today.